I held out for way too long not getting an ultra-wide monitor. I was really worried about how it was going to affect my gaming, the productivity on my computer, as well as just is going to take up too much of that precious desk real estate. I wanted to make sure that this was going to work. Well, I finally took the jump last year, and after 6 months with this BenQ Ultrawide, I can say that I'm sold. Welcome back to the Pixel Pub. Just kidding. This is the Pixel Pub back office. Welcome back to the Pixel Pub back office. Either way, we still have access to the drinks. Let's talk through a couple of things, the pros and cons, what I like and what I don't like about this ultra-wide monitor. All right, before you nerds ask all about it, let's talk about some of the specs of this specific monitor. So this is the BenQ EX3415R. It's a 34-inch 2K ultra-wide QHD monitor, 3440 by 1440 resolution, 144 Hz curved screen monitor. 2 millisecond response time, IPS panel, includes AMD FreeSync as well as HDMI 2.0, DisplayPort 1.4, all of that kind of stuff. According to BenQ's website, they have ultra smart HDR, crazy refresh rates, really high contrast ratios, great colors, and all of that stuff. But honestly, if you want to know more about that, take a look at their website for yourself. I don't want to read it word for word for you. What I do want to talk to you about is about how I feel about this monitor. So the first thing I want to do is talk to you about my experiences switching from a standard 1080p display to this ultra-wide monitor. So not only did we switch to an ultra-wide monitor, but also a 1440p 2K monitor versus a 1080p regular HD monitor. And first, let's just get the 1440p out of the way. Again, had no idea how big of an impact that would make. Not necessarily on gaming, but honestly on the multitasking. The amount of extra real estate you have on your screen when you've got a 1440p and I can only assume a 4K monitor was absolutely crazy to me. That makes me feel so much better about having this ultra-wide monitor instead of two side-by-side 1080p monitors. I can very comfortably fit 3 applications next to each other depending on exactly how big they need to be. But as far as the widescreen goes, this is where I'm actually falling in love with it. When you talk about productivity, the amount of stuff that I can fit on this screen alone is crazy. When it comes to content creation, this is one of the main reasons I wanted to get a widescreen monitor. The extra timeline space at the bottom of the screen is absolutely invaluable. To be able to have everything a little bit bigger, just a little bit more space, feels so good. Hey guys, Editor Devin here. It feels so good. If you edit a lot of videos, I highly recommend an ultra-wide monitor. And then the third aspect we wanted to talk about is gaming. And really, I think this comes down to the games that you want to play. And some of the only cons with a monitor like this is really when it comes to specific games. In the past, I've been a huge League of Legends player. Not necessarily competitive, but it is one of those games where you're constantly dragging your mouse to the sides of the screen to move the camera. You are constantly looking at the mini-map, which is locked to the corner of the screen. Not to a certain position, locked to the corner. Playing on an ultra-wide monitor just puts you at a clear disadvantage in some of those games. Although you can obviously put it in windowed mode, scale it to the right resolution, use it for competitive play if you want to do something like that. But just getting the most out of the monitor, I was a little bit nervous about that. I can gladly say that playing League of Legends, even on the non-competitive scale that I play, is still really fun, is still a blast. I really honestly didn't notice the difference too much. Honestly, I'm probably just not looking at my mini-map anyways. But when it comes to other games, most of the games that I have played all perform absolutely wonderful on the ultra-wide monitor. It's becoming such a common thing these days that so many games come absolutely native with the ultra-wide support that I haven't had any issues. The one issue that a lot of people are probably going to run into is, do you have the power in your computer to support the extra pixels that this monitor needs? If you're used to seeing a certain amount of FPS on your 1080p monitor and you're switching to an ultra wide, you're gonna expect less FPS on general, and you'll definitely be spending a couple $100s on a graphics card if you want it to play 1440p, especially in an ultra wide setting. I wanted to also quickly address the elephant in the room here. This isn't actually my first ultra widescreen monitor. I have this Dell Ultrawide up here too. So what is that all about? So this one is actually something that my wife used to use on a regular basis. It's almost 10 years old at this point, one of the very first ultra-wide monitors. I recently inherited it and started using it as my second monitor, as my wife wanted something with a higher refresh rate. So long story short, for a very long time, I had a standard 32-inch 1080p high refresh rate monitor on the bottom, and then this Dell ultra-wide monitor on the top. But because of its age, because of the 60 hertz refresh rate, because of the colors kind of starting to fade at this point, it's always been a second monitor for me. I've never used it as my main monitor. Not to mention just the size difference. The vertical screen real estate on the Dell just kind of makes me nervous. I wouldn't want to be using something of that 29-inch range as my main monitor. The 34-inch is as small as I would go at this point. While we're talking about screen sizes, let's also talk about that desk real estate. So my desk here, to give you a little bit of perspective, is my desk here is a 5-foot desk. And honestly, it fits pretty nicely. I've got my desktop on one side. They're called desktop computers for a reason. All of you people putting your desktops on the floor. I've got the 34-inch ultra-wide monitor in the middle, and I've got my laptop over here to the side, all with plenty of room to live happily together. I was really worried about this at first, but this is where the vertical stacking really comes in handy. Not only is the vertical stacking something I've really gotten used to, it's a lot easier to look a little bit up and down than it is to look really far left and right, especially if you want more than 2 monitors. But if you're wanting an ultra-wide monitor, this is the way that you have to go if you have a second screen. One other really small thing I wanted to mention about this monitor, being as big as it is, means that the speakers inside the monitor can actually be much bigger as well, which typically means the better sound quality. Now, I still have my desktop speakers that I use all the time, but in the short time that I was using the monitor without those speakers, honestly, the sound was pretty great. I've never had monitor speakers that have been quite as full sounding as the speakers coming from this monitor. Are there any negatives to having an ultra-wide monitor? Absolutely. We already talked about certain games not functioning correctly or having to be played windowed, stretching a little bit weird, having to do some tweaking when you first install the game just to get it to play right. There are going to be some other weird things with different websites and different applications as well as you try to find the right aspect ratio. If websites or applications are built for that 1920 by 1080 resolution, they're just gonna look a little bit funky on an ultra-wide monitor. At the end of the day, is that a big enough reason to not get one? For me, it's definitely not. After 6 months, I can safely say that I'll be using this ultra-wide monitor for a very long time to come. For something that I stare at 8, 10, 12, maybe even more hours every single day, I definitely want something that looks good, that performs well, and gives me all the productivity options that I need. Have you made the switch to an ultra-wide monitor yet? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, make sure you check out this video next. I'm heading down to the pub for a drink.